Sam, let me ask you something and this is on the heels of, I mean, you're going to know because I've been passionate about Nebraska's methodology and paying dividends and finding guys and diamonds in the rough. I mean, you've heard me talk about this forever, right?
Mhm.
And but when you get a guy just yesterday and Corey Broomfield, who, for those that don't know, he's down at First Academy. He clearly has a hand in training and with Danny Odom and Danny he commits today or makes his announcement today at whatever time 5 or 4:30 5 I think he's 5. And just yesterday, Coach Broom says, so happy for this guy. Had nothing and took everything in 12 months. We'll be watching ESPN tomorrow. And I can't help, maybe this is selfish, Sam. I don't know. Maybe this is my skirt and pom poms for Nebraska. But when I read things like that, I can't help but to further feel like this is like some hokey, cheesy moment. But man, I respect the heck out of Nebraska because part of that had nothing and took everything in 12 months was Nebraska going first and investing in Odom when basically what Coach Broomfield said wasn't a lot happening with that recruiting
Mhm.
12
Right.
months ago. And now, 12 months later, he's down in Nebraska, Clemson. He's got Penn State, OU, and I'm missing one. Oh, Ohio
Ohio
State,
State.
right? Like, Nebraska needs to win the recruiting battle, but I'm not mad. I wouldn't be mad regardless based on how this thing has played out in the last month because that's been who Nebraska is. Now I get it. At some point, man, you got to say I do at the aisle.
Gotta land them. Yeah.
You gotta get them. But isn't this just who Nebraska has been?
Yeah. So if you have a good process, then the outcomes should eventually pay off. That's usually what you're doing. Is you're kind of putting the hay in the barn, so to speak. And like you live with the decision, kind of like you live with the last shot if you know that everything you did up to the last shot of the game was everything you could do.
Yeah.
And then the shot either goes
D-
in or it doesn't. And
di-
that's kind of how individual decisions are made.
difference between pain and regret, right?
Sure. Yeah. And
Regret
so,
regret is not doing everything you could.
right. Did you do everything? And I think Nebraska feels like in almost every circumstance in recruiting,
Hmm.
they've done just about everything they can do. And we'll see, we'll see how it goes. I think they're probably going to get Odom, and then there's a running back announcing
Rule.
today. And yeah, Jamal Rule. And I think they'll probably get him too. And that's the start of I think maybe a mini run. I don't know how many commits it'll include. It might be
You could get
three, it might
you
be
could get as
five.
many as 3 this week.
Right. It could be, over the course of the next couple of weeks, it could be 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Darian Jones will announce on the 4th of July, which is 13 days, 12 days away. And then there could be a couple more in there. So yeah, I think Nebraska's process is good. I continue to watch. I think they're going to be good at skill recruiting. I think, broadly speaking, Nebraska's been pretty good at skill recruiting, or at least at getting the guys here. I think Nebraska's doing a better job of getting the fit right than they used to. Still watching the big linemen. I think the line recruiting is just to some degree, it's not even skill, it's art, it's a little bit of luck. Now the portal makes it easier to go get a guy like you can resolve your problems with Elijah Pritchett and Rocco Spindler.
That certainly wasn't easy though.
No, it wasn't. But like you can. Let's put it this way: when you go compete for Elijah Pritchett, the one school you don't have to compete with is the school he's transferring from. And so that's one of the advantages. And a lot of times, guys, when they transfer out, especially if they transfer out of the SEC, because of the SEC's rules, they don't go to the SEC. And so you're crossing off 15 other schools. And so there's an advantage in the portal, is my point. But in high school recruiting, figuring out like I thought, obviously they did a terrific job with these two linemen over the weekend, Cooper and how do you say his name?
Puma. Yeah.
I mean, they did everything they could. Now the question comes down, okay, are these guys, do the big guys want to, they're a little, I've always found they're, in just covering recruiting, they're a little harder to pinpoint. Like to know exactly what those guys want all the time, unless they're from 150 miles away. Then you kind of know. But Nebraska's trying to nationally recruit that position. I don't blame them. I think that's a good move. We'll just see how it goes. Like it's always been tricky. That's a position those positions have never been easy. I mean, you could argue one of the great recruiting coups of all time for Nebraska football was Neil Smith out of New Orleans. How do they get him? And that's just incredible recruiting. And you could argue that Neil Smith
they stumbled into the eval too.
I'm sure they did. I don't know the whole story.
Yeah, they weren't exactly looking at Neil Smith when they're watching that VHS.
Okay.
Neil Smith made himself seen.
I'm sure he did.
Hey, who's this guy?
Right. But if you want to associate the greatest years of Nebraska football, you know what you do? You look at whoever was playing defensive tackle or nose tackle, and here are the names that you come up with. And I think the 80s were a great time for Nebraska football, too. You come up with Rich Glover, Danny Noonan, Neil Smith, Ndamukong Suh, Jason Peter, Christian Peter, and whoever else you want to name from the 90s. We're not even talking about the edge guys. We're just talking about those guys in the middle. Only one of those guys came from inside the state, and the others came from all over the country. Portland, New Orleans, New Jersey. So, like, you've got that when Nebraska's really good, they have these great linemen. And so I'll be curious to see how that goes on both sides of the ball. But I think Nebraska's done a great job of recruiting under Rule. They have a vision, they have a plan, they know how to communicate with the kids. It's just a competitive landscape, especially for linemen who are gold in college football. So, we'll see how they do.
Yeah, no disrespect to Ron Colley Pride's finest and Jim Scow either, who was from right down.
He was great.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, he was incredible from right down the street. So I threw that in because we were just going through the litany of and I had to throw in at least one more local guy.
No, it's great.
I mean, let's give our guy Jared Crick a little love too.
I mean, Scow was sensational. He
was
really,
very good.
He really, really was. Sam, so have you had a chance to watch Jamal Rule? Because I feel like running back is, I can't remember who said this, probably 6-7 months ago. Our stream would know. Who was it, Ravi, that we were talking to? Sam, it may have been you. When I said, what's with the hand wringing and consternation? And it was explained to me. It was, and this he's telling the running back, so this is funny, who went there because of the history, which is also funny. But he goes, listen, Nebraska is like running back U for all intents and purposes. Like the standard at running back at Nebraska is going to be tough. I think that's part of it.
Schaefer.
Was it Schaefer?
Schaefer.
Okay. And I was like, oh, shoot. I guess that makes sense, right? Every running back that comes here is compared to yesteryear. And that might be the only position in which we do that. Right?
I think we do it at offensive line in general.
I don't. I think we think the pipeline was such. We do compare it. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we think it's if it's attainable again.
Maybe.
At running back, I think we think it's attainable.
That's fair.
Right? Is that any remotely accurate, Sam?
Yeah.
On why we're so tough
at blocking tight ends.
Well, not you can't. You're not always going to have a Jamie Williams or a William Washington. I mean, come on.
No, but that's what
not everybody can be Tom Banderas.
Right. No, I think running back is the one position that if you're a Husker fan of a certain age, I think if you're like a 25-year-old Husker fan, you don't do that. But if you're my age, and I'm 47, yeah, you do. So, like, what I grew up on, like, my first memories of Nebraska football were Mike Rozier, and I was 6. And so, like, Mike Rozier and Jeff Smith and Doug DeBose, you just go down the line. Keith Jones. Like, those are the guys when you went out in the yard. I'm not trying to knock any of the quarterbacks. You were always the running back that got the pitch. You weren't the quarterback making the pitch, or at least I was.
Yeah.
And so you were always like one of my favorites.
I'm just telling you, Sam. My man Mike Huffman, he was Remington, and I was Turner Gill. I'm just.
Right. That's
I mean,
good.
it's
You were.
my man could
I was
snap a
always
football.
running back. Right. So that's just what you did. Is you were the option was such a captivating play that, you were always watching the guy that got the ball. And so, I think it's a high standard of running back at Nebraska. And so people are judged at this point. If you're a 30-year-old fan, you judge every back against Amir Abdullah and Rex Burkhead. If you're my age, you judge them against all of them.
You know what
that go back to the 80s.
You know what I don't understand about the Amir and Rex thing? And even Roy Halou, for that matter, who's grossly underappreciated. Mm-hmm. We didn't even like Amir when he was being recruited. We were the only school that was going to let him play running back, and he was an add-in at the end of the recruiting cycle, and he was met with consternation like we do every other running back. Yet we haven't learned from history that those guys, if Amir Abdullah is the gold standard, then you should be opening yourself up to thinking anything's possible in the level of recruitment with developing a running back.
He should.
He wasn't this prolific 4 or 5 star where we watched the film and we're like, damn, this dude is pretty saucy.
He was the 3rd guy in that class behind Braylon Hurd and Aaron Green.
Yeah. And I watched those practices. Mm-hmm. I saw Rex and Green and Hurd and Amir, and I was like, do you know why Amir played? Because he practiced like flipping Rex. And I looked at Hurd, and I left a practice one day after talking to Coach Brown, and I'm like, he was intimating, hey man, you want to talk to these young guys? And I was like, oh yeah, I can kind of see it right away, where it was about work ethic and commitment and wanting to be first in line and being the first through the drills. And I'm looking at Green and Hurd, and I'm like, man, these guys aren't playing because they're more physically gifted than you. They're ahead of you because they want to be. Right? Like, yeah, I'm dead serious. Like, they were ahead of those guys. They got outworked, and they were always available. When you're at 8 all the time and not a 2 and then a 10, those are the guys that. It's why Amir's still in the league. He refuses to go away. Like, he's just not. It's the same. They just refuse. You can get rid of me, but it ain't gonna be because of me. You're just gonna have to not like me. Like, I mean, that's basically. He's overcome the fun. Like, anything can happen.
It can, and that's why one of the reasons why I like the running back position so much is it incorporates some of what you're talking about to such a degree that, of course, it's about athleticism and speed and size and all those things. But there's an intangible quality at running back that just means a little bit more than maybe it does at receiver. And I'm not trying to say that receivers don't have those things too, but you can be a great, great receiver and not necessarily, and just be able to run by people. And, I would argue that the Cleveland Browns have one of the 5 most talented receivers in the NFL, and Jerry Jeudy. In fact, I'm quite confident of that. And he finally kind of played up to his potential, but for 5 years he did. Like, he just didn't even. And you watch that guy run, and you're like, you are like a Ferrari. You have no problem running any route and shifting to any speed, and you're in the league because of that. It's not because you're an elite. You're not Jerry Rice as a work ethic. So like. But if you're an NFL running back, you really can't do that.
And there's all sorts of different styles too, right? Like, LaDainian doesn't run like Jim Brown. Jim Brown didn't run like Barry. Barry didn't run like Walter. Bo didn't run like Gale Sayers. Dickerson doesn't run like Falk. Like, they're just so many different ways to skin the cat at running back.
Correct. And so I think Nebraska's in an okay spot. I think I have watched Rule. He plays in an offense where he's kind of in a one-back pistol, and a pistol is kind of like an I formation without the fullback.
Mm-hmm.
They run a lot of outside zone. He's really good at it. And then they run some inside zone, and he's pretty good at that. And he's a big guy.
He's got good size.
Small. Oh, yeah. So he's 6 foot, about 205 pounds, and he looks it. So that's a pretty sizable back. He'll probably gain a few pounds in the NFL, or I'm sorry, in college. But I think he's got a chance to be pretty good. I think he's in a room that's really interesting. If he commits, and I think he will, he joins a room that's really interesting. Like Emmett is just a junior, and so he is not going to be a senior. He'll be back next year if he wants to come back. And then you've got Quentin Ives, who's a very different back than Emmett Johnson. And then you've got Mekhi Nelson, who's different than both of them. And then you have Jamarian Parker, and then you have all the walk-ons. Connor Booth's not a walk-on, but you have Connor Booth. And so, like, it'll be really intriguing to watch. That room develop, especially this year. You know, they need a number 2 guy, and I'll be curious to see if that is Ives or if it is Nelson, or I don't know. Parker's been banged up, so I don't know if he'll be the guy. So Ives or Nelson, I'll be curious to see what they do.
I wonder. Emmett's been such a good ambassador in terms of his work ethic, and they're clearly helping him with his branding.
Mm-hmm.
Just, you know, like he's just been a solid ambassador for the program. I wonder if Nebraska would be okay if he had a good year where they're like, hey man, go get yours.
Go to the NFL.
No, like whatever.
Yeah, whatever that looks like.
Whatever he wants to do. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
You go to a different program?
Yeah, I don't know why I just thought that, but I'm just like,
I don't think so.
No, I'm saying not that they are encouraging it, but he's been so good to them and for them that it would be like
if somebody came up with a number they didn't want to match.
Yeah, they'd say, hey man, go get yours.
Basically.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right. That's possible. I think once you have a back,
it'd be nice to have that kind of year.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good problem to have at the end of the year, right?
I think if you're a back as versatile as Emmett is, you want to keep that guy because he can kind of do all 3 things. Now that he's developed as a pass blocker, he's always been a pretty good receiver, and so I think you want to keep that guy in the fold. Again, I'm intrigued to see what Mekhi Nelson can do, because you know, I guess I'm intrigued by Quentin Ives too. I don't know if Ives is going to be a pass catcher and if he's going to be that guy. I do think Nelson can do all the things. I do want to see it. And then, you know, I've heard good things about Jamarian Parker, and I've seen good things on tape, but you don't know until he does it. I'll be really intrigued to see how things go this year at that position beyond Emmett.
If we're talking intrigue, and I'm just keeping it a buck, I'm probably the most intrigued by Mekhi Nelson. I think I know what Ives is.
Mm-hmm.
Mekhi, I think I do, and I want to see more. Right? So like that's the difference between those two. EJ, you know, the evolution in terms of how he could be used in this offense could be fun because I think you'll see multiple running backs out in matchups. You know, Nebraska could break the huddle with, you know, for instance, you could go you could break the huddle with Lindemeyer, you know, Barney, Hunter, Emmett Johnson, and Dane Key, and Emmett Johnson could be in the slot, and you could motion, or Bonner or somebody could be in the backfield. If it's not Lindemeyer, you could motion them. I mean, just the matchups you can get, right? Because what defenses will say, hey, I have final number 3, or you have first number 2, or, you know, we're in quarters, where you can totally, with the versatility within those guys, you can manipulate the matchup.
Assignments.
I could see a ton of backs out in space in the passing game, and it would be hard to handle, right? Because I could get you on a linebacker if I wanted.
Yeah. I think that's something that I'm sure they're gonna.
And that's one of the things Holgerson's really good at,
right?
Like historically, that he's been really good at.
Yeah. Yes. Getting smaller is the wrong word, but
Getting faster guys
guys
on
that are-
bigger guys.
Yeah, or just like, some running backs are 5'10", and, you don't necessarily have a ton of slot receivers that are 5'10", some, but not that many. And sometimes what you want to do is you want to isolate the 5'10" guy on whatever they think is a good idea to cover that 5'10" guy with, usually a linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what Kai Nelson's height is. Say it's 5'11". I don't really think there's a lot of Big Ten linebackers that can cover him. Now, people don't know that.
No.
But
No.
I don't think there are.
No.
So
Dude,
stuff like that.
dude
like,
is
okay, so they're going to go
shifty.
play. Yeah, they're going to play Michigan. And I have no idea if Ernest Hausman. And again, Ernest Hausman is one of the 5 best linebackers in the Big Ten.
Dude, how about him making the regional cover of Athlons?
Great. He deserves it. But I don't know if he can cover, you wouldn't put him on Ja'Cory Barney. And I don't know if Hausman can cover McKewon. I have no idea. Like, you're going to have to, there's things that they'll have to figure out and decide on their own and testing games. And, is Isaiah Mosey, can he kind of function as a running back at times? Can you take him into the slot
listen, absolutely.
Run? Yeah.
That's exactly what I would do. That is I would
just motion him into.
No, listen.
Yeah.
I would play Mosey at running back.
He's pretty thick.
He's really thick.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. But again.
Yeah. I think they're probably gonna use him in that sequence a little bit. If, for example, like, I'm sure one of the conversations they have is, hey, we know in Ja'Cory Barney we got a really special sort of electric receiver. Do we really need him to run the jet sweep, or do we want to give Isaiah Mosey, who weighs 20 more pounds, those runs?
And he's really good with
Bonner.
He's really good with the ball in his hands. He's not really a natural receiver.
Mm-hmm. There's a little Debo in there.
Yeah.
There's a little Debo in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bonner may not be quite fast enough.
I just have a man crush, so I don't care what Bonner does.
I love Bonner.
I just think he's a good. He's a good player too. He just comes across as a good teammate too.
Right. I'm not saying he's not a good player, but there's 2 kind of sweeps you can run. Well, more than that.
You can run kind of like a power jet sweep a little bit if he's kind of hammering off that tackle a little harder.
Right, and that you're that's on 3rd and 2, and you're hoping to gain 3 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can do that. What I like this sweep as is the way Mike Riley used to use it, which is you want to use it as a play that's going to get you 15.
Sure.
And the way he'd use it with Brandon Riley and Alonzo Moore, and those 2 guys were fast. And then sometimes he'd come back with a smaller guy, and it wasn't it was more of a motion sweep where they would come around the play, as opposed to a fly sweep is what he used to call it, where what you're trying to do is basically get the guy around the entire defense really quickly.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of guys. If you're gonna be a sweep guy, and not have elite level speed, the one thing you've got to be able to do is put your foot in the dirt, because sometimes it's mostly about finding the first available vertical crease, which is hard to do when you're running laterally. So you have to have a guy that has good feel, that has the courage enough to do that. Because that's really what it is. I mean, I'm watching Wisconsin, and I'm watching Wisconsin run sweeps, and very little of it was predicated on just sheer speed. Now they would formation out leverage Nebraska, but a lot of those guys
they look way faster than you.
Yeah, because they become a foot race because they're running you off with motion, which was, I'm not even going to get into how they were doing it, but it wasn't good.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's a play that Wisconsin's basically gotten rid of in their new, when their new coach got in there. I don't understand what they're doing.
But sometimes you'd see that thing hit inside of a tight end, right? Because
you basically split the tackle on a tight end.
Yeah, it's like, so, I mean, that's kind of the key for those kinds of things. I don't know why we just went down.
Right. So there's all these different things that I think Nebraska can do. Then it becomes, okay, what is, if you're a Nebraska coordinator, if you're a holder, so what are we going to do? And then, how do you get the offense to do all the things you want it to do? And then when it's 3rd and 7, Rule said this on ESPN last week, and it was a good comment. He's like, teams that go to the CFP win 3rd down.
Yep.
And what he meant by that was, on 3rd down, you have to stop the opposing offense on 3rd and 7, and on 3rd and 7, you have to have answers. And I think they would say that down has not been a down that they've won consistently enough in their time at Nebraska. And honestly, I don't know that a lot of it's been coaching.
Listen, it's the 32-40, it's the 32-46 rule where you want to get folks off the field less than 30 or 32% of the time. You don't want them to have a 32% or less conversion rate, and you want to be in the high 40s as an offense. I mean, that's what it is. You get to those two numbers, and you're cooking. You are absolutely cooking.
That's right. And he also mentioned, what they've done the first 2 years, and he was referencing Tony White, is they would just get in man coverage and try to lock everybody down. And of course, man coverage, there's safeties behind that. But he also said, hey, we got to do some different things defensively. We can't just do that. We have to do more. And then on offense, I don't know that they were calling the wrong plays. I think their quarterback needs to run a little bit more often, and I think he'll do that. And then two, they needed better players. So, and I think they're going to have that. And I think they're going to have a little bit better options at receiver. But then Holgerson's got to be able to decide, okay, do I want Mosey and Cortez Mills in on this play? How do I want to use Bonner? There's only so many snaps in a football game. There's probably 70 snaps in a game now. Who gets what snaps? How do we keep everybody happy? They'll probably be able to keep people happy through 3 games. But then you get into Big Ten play, and we saw this with Jalen Lloyd, who's an awfully talented football player. Sometimes he just kind of disappeared. They didn't put him in the game, and they probably should have, to the point where Rule's saying it in press conferences. And, so that's the thing that you've got to make sure you're keeping track of is, are your best athletes getting in games consistently, or are you getting stuck in personnel formations where, guys like a Jalen Lloyd might only play 6 snaps in a game, and he probably ought to be playing 25.
How much do you think the existing relationship between Shorts and Holgerson, you think, helps solve that?
I think it helps. Yeah, I think it helps. They'll be able to have a dialogue with one another. I mean, again, Dane Key's probably not leaving the field much, so this isn't about Key, and I don't really think it's about Hunter.
Yeah,
because it wasn't about Isaiah Nayor and it wasn't about Jamal Banks. They played. I mean, those guys played a lot.
It's about Barney and Mills and Mosey and those guys.
Yeah,
we haven't heard a lot of talk about Mosey either. I'm surprised you brought him up, Sam.
Oh, he's way up there, don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, somewhere, because we're forgetting about the more accomplished receiver that we haven't mentioned yet either. But he plays outside the numbers for the most part, so we're not sure if there's going to be room with Hunter and Key. But he came in with a pretty good young man down there from Florida.
Well, yes, Mills is So I'm sure the hope with Mills, and this is he's not Mills? A developmental player. Yeah, Mills. Are you thinking of somebody else?
Nope. I was thinking of Cortez.
Okay. So, what I would say about
Cortez
Mills,
strikes me as more the natural receiver. Mosey's more the guy that can run after the cat. Yeah.
Right. The deal with Mills, and this is just my opinion, I could be wrong. If he has 12 catches for 203 yards this year, he's done what he's supposed to do. Like, I don't know that guy is going to have, unless somebody gets hurt, he's going to have 45 catches. He's a guy that after Key leaves can then move into, okay, now he's going to be the guy that's, that grabs 50 for 1,000. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what you're looking for, a player like Mills to develop into an elite, dominant outside threat that scares teams, basically. And that may take a year or two. So people's perception of what he's capable of this year, they may want to temper that a little bit, because he may not necessarily get 30 catches unless somebody gets hurt. He may get 11, and those 11 are good. They're really good plays, and that's what you're kind of looking at there. Whereas like a Ja'Cory Barney, I don't know how many catches he ended up with last year, 40, something like that. He's a slot guy, and you're going to get him the ball, and he's going to try to do things. It's like an extended handoff. Mills is very important, in my opinion, to the program because he's the guy that can go stand out, go outside and basically run the post. He's what Xavier Betts could have been, same thing there. You don't necessarily have 5 of those guys on your team unless you're LSU, but you get a couple of them and you develop them and hopefully they become the players that you really want them to be. Do you think Dane Key is that player?
I don't know. He gets open a lot. I know that, but I mean, we'll see where the verticality comes in the passing game, because I think one of the things that Nebraska's really putting themselves in position to do is they can scheme with personnel, because the first thing defensive coordinators look for is who's in the game. So, you'll have key indicators. Say it's 12 in the game, it's 44 in the game. You'll have things that you'll be asking people in the booth to tell you so you can get a gauge on formation. What Nebraska's going to try to be able to do is not dictate what formation they're in based on who's in the game. So I think it's really important for Lindenmeyer to line up as an H-back and Bonner to be out in a slot, or Emmett to be out in a slot, or whomever with your outside guys, or vice versa, or however you want to do it, so you can dictate where you want the ball to go. Key's a guy that I don't know how much they'll move him around.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I would be totally speculating, but I do know he's really good at navigating spaces and understanding defensive concepts. So if your OC and your quarterback you can almost use him like a chess piece because of his football IQ. That's kind of more what I'm thinking.
Got it. Yeah, I think he's probably pretty versatile as well. Mark Whipple used Trey Palmer that way. And I don't know.
I mean, you could break the huddle with 3 tight ends and not one of them lines up as an inline guy.
Mm-hmm.
You could.
Remember when Penn State did that to Nebraska when they had Jesse James and they had 3 really good ones, and they put them outside the numbers, and Bo would get in like big personnel, and then they'd throw it to him outside the numbers. I was like, this is a nightmare.
Was that O'Brien?
It was.
Yeah.
That was Bill O'Brien.
Yeah, it was a flipping nightmare.
That was
he's good at some of that
2012
stuff.
and 2013.
I was like,
I mean, I don't know what I'll be curious to see.
if Carter Nelson's healthy and he breaks the huddle, where is he going?
Yeah.
He's actually really interesting.
Do you know what I mean?
Like the way that we've talked about how this offense could look, that's a guy that's super interesting. Lindemeyer's a guy that's super interesting. Harburg's a guy that's super interesting.
Where's Harburg break the huddle? He could easily be a running back, and you put Emmett out in the slot. Like, that's doable.
Talented tight end in the room might be Mac Markway, who we don't talk about because we don't know what to expect.
I mean, if EJ and Harburg and Bonner break the huddle with 2 fast guys on the outside or inside or wherever you put them, you think Bonner can't line up outside the numbers and you put Hunter inside to work on a nickel? Like, they can do anything.
They can do a lot. It's just it's going to be really interesting to watch how they figure it out and, how they incorporate their run game into all that. Yeah, it's they are not lacking for options or potential. I think it's now you got to dial it into, okay, here's who we're going to be and here's the identity and then move all of that with tempo when you need to. So the thing that I felt like Satterfield struggled with, or whatever, struggle's the wrong word. I'm not trying to knock that.
When you don't know what your players are capable of, you're going to look like that. And I'm not making excuses for Sat. I'm just saying, like, man, the dude had his hands full.
He did. And I just felt like there were times where, like, get your quarterback some pace. Like, give Dylan what Dylan can handle, and Dylan can handle going fast. Like, some quarterbacks actually can't handle that. And one of the things that I think he has, one of the gifts I think God's given him, is the ability to process and move quickly. And, like, man, you get that. Give your quarterback the ability to go really quickly and process quickly when things are going well. And I felt like a lot of times they'd get rolling and Raiola, they'd have to slow it down because they had to bring 3 guys in and 3 out. And you know, let's run this certain play. And I don't know. I think Dylan's better when he's able to just keep going and move quickly. And so hopefully Holgorsen gives him opportunities. Not every drive, but let's say the first drive of the second quarter and you're up 10-7 against Cincinnati. And that's possible. Turn it up and go score fast. And get up 10 and then get a stop and then try to put one more on the board and then go into halftime. Like, find ways to give him an opportunity to move the ball very quickly down the field. And I think Holgorsen will have that gear for Raiola when it's appropriate.
Mm. That's our guy, Sam McKewon, Omaha World Herald. Great stuff as always, Sam. Thanks for letting us kind of keep you a little overtime here. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Sam.
Take care. Bye.